Good morning, Lantigua girls. Welcome back to the Wunderkammer, the Cabinet of Wonders. This morning, I want to talk a little bit about boxes and containers, which I think of as, well, little secrets. Because sometimes you have containers like the ones that you have in the grocery store, or the ones that are clear plastic, where it tells you exactly what's in the box. At least you are led to believe that what it says on the cover of the box is what might be inside the box. So when you buy cereal or macaroni and cheese, most of the time you're not too surprised when you open the box. What I think is exciting, though, is to open up containers that have something special inside. Maybe it's a secret, what's inside. Maybe it's something very valuable. In fact, maybe there's a lock on the box, which implies that there might be something valuable inside. Sometimes the boxes or the containers themselves are more beautiful than what's inside, or apparently more beautiful. Sometimes we just don't know what we have. We don't know how valuable some things are until we begin to investigate them and learn their stories. Other times the boxes or containers are quite plain, and then it's even more exciting to draw back the cover and see what's inside. I bet you've heard that expression, you can't judge a book by its cover. Boxes. They're made of many materials. I'm going to show you just a few. One is not quite like the others. So that's something you'll want to think about a little bit, is how we put things in categories, or how we group things together. You may have seen that I've taken things and grouped them together because of something that they have in common. So what these all have in common is that they contain, but one is a little bit different in the way we use it than the others. And I'm going to start with that one. I'm going to start with a Japanese personal secret box. In Japanese, that's himatsu bako. And it is a very special box, beautiful on the outside. Now, is there something inside? Well, that remains to be seen. It's a technique, an inlay technique. So these are different kinds of wood, and they're dyed and then set together in these patterns called yosugizaiku. Yosugizaiku is a special inlay technique. Very, very thin pieces fit together in patterns. Now, what's puzzling, and that's why they sometimes call it a Japanese puzzle box, is how am I supposed to open it? It doesn't seem to slide. Well, there you are. There's a secret. Now, I've tried to open this many times, and I still can't remember exactly how to do it. So you and I can struggle through this together. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to move that panel. And then we're going to go here and move another panel. Now, can we get... oh, look. Is that it? No, I think it's going to be this side. We're going to push that down. So what I did was I pushed it down, push, push, push down, push out. Now I can push this down. Can I do, well, oh, I can see now that there's something there. So maybe this is going to open up for me, but it still won't do it. So I'm going to push down. No, is that it? No. I'm going to push out here. Oh, I pushed and pushed, but now it's still not. So I pushed that out again. Still not going to work. Oh, I pushed it down again. I did it. And what's inside? It's just a feather, but it's a special feather. It's one that Mr. Miller brought back to me after he'd been on a run, and he saw it. Now, the thing is, I have to put this back together, so I slide it all that way, and I push up, and then I push it back and push up, push that side in, push that side in. I'm still not done, because I have to close that, push that back, and push that up. Well, something like that. A Japanese puzzle box or personal secret box. Himatsu bako. All right. Now, these others I chose because they are, they're kind of the wooden equivalent of Tupperware. These were created long before we had plastics to contain foods. And the first one that I'm going to show you is called a Tine. It's also called a laup, but this is from Scandinavia. Tine, some people in some parts of the country call it that, and other people call it a laup. A laup was a measure. So a laup was a little bit like a pound, 16 ounces, a laup, and you measured out dry foods and other things in laups instead of as ounces or pounds or grams. Tine is from the Latin word for a wine container, which is a little bit funny because these are not watertight. If you pour wine into a tine, it's going to leak out. Same way with milk. You can put milk products in it, though. You can put yogurt and maybe a pudding or a porridge that's made with milk and grain, cheeses. And in fact, after women had children, they usually remained at home for a time to rest before they went out and resumed their labors or their visits or even going to church. And so usually the women of the community would bring food to them so that they could first of all rest and recover. And so there are a group of Norwegian women, and they're bringing sustenance to a new mother. And there you can see a tine. And you can see they're decorated in a special way too. This particular kind of decoration is called rosmaling, and that just means rose painting. That may not look exactly like a rose, but that's the idea. In different parts of the country, different kinds of rosmaling patterns. And then the other nifty thing is up here with these kind of, I call them dragon wings. This is what holds the lid in place. You have to kind of pull back up a little bit, and then you can lift off the top, and then it snaps back into place so that it doesn't lose its lid. This one is really more of a souvenir size, but they usually were much bigger. And in fact, I'll show you sometime one that I have is quite a bit bigger, and we can put more things in it than what we might be able to get in this tine. A tine from Norway. Then I have one that's made out of ceramics, and again, this is just a miniature souvenir sort of container, and it doesn't have a lid. It may have had a lid at one time. This is what they call a replica. It's made to look like one that was much larger. What I think is so wonderful about it is its shape, like an animal. It looks a little bit like, I would say, a duck or a goose, and it was used to contain grains and other kinds of foodstuffs. And the original one was from Mesa Verde. If you know where that is, it's in Colorado. It's where people created their homes by carving into the stone on the side of a cliff or a mountain. And usually it was at the bottom of the cliffs or the mountains where it began, and then they built up, and you had to get to your homes at the top. So you had storage at the bottom, and actually you could come down and perhaps cultivate your livestock and your fields of corn, maize, and beans and squash, and some kinds of wild grains. And you would store those at the bottom of this community, and then you carved your homes up into the mountains, and you had to get up to your home with a ladder. And at night, to stay safe, you pulled your ladder up. So this is a little reminder of that community which disappeared a long time ago. We don't really know where the people of Mesa Verde went, but we have their extraordinary homes, and we have some of their extraordinary food containers as well. And then the last few containers that I'm going to show you today are what they call tea caddies. Now, we think of tea coming in bags, and we don't pay very much for teas these days. But even today, there are teas that are quite extraordinary. In fact, there's so much to say about tea, I hardly have time here. It's an important and valuable drink, and it's part of many countries' histories. And as you get older, you'll learn more about how tea is a part of this country's history. The tea comes from places like China and India and Sri Lanka. When it first was brought to Europe and the United States, it had to come from a very long way. It was very expensive. And to kind of limit, to both limit its distribution and to profit by it, to make money for the national treasury, it was heavily taxed. It was something that calmed us down. It was something that healed. It was something that stimulated. So teas were served in coffee houses where mainly gentlemen, but sometimes women gathered and exchanged lively news and ideas, and it was a place of great ferment. Many important ideas came about over a cup of tea. Why do I say maybe not where the ladies had gathered? Well, the ladies were gathering more privately. The conversation was just as lively. There were just as many extraordinary ideas being exchanged, but it was mainly in the home. And it was also, as I said, something that healed, tea. And so it used to be that you bought teas at a drugstore or an apothecary. And it's only in very modern times that we go to the grocery store and just pick out a box of tea in bags. You can drink tea that way, but you can also drink tea by pulling out a little bit of loose tea and putting it in something through which you can strain the water. So when you had loose tea, you had to contain it in something. You didn't buy very much, or you usually didn't have very much tea on hand because it was expensive, and it was like a controlled substance, we could say. And you wanted to keep it in a safe place, a place where you recognized where you had laid it. You didn't want to forget where you put your tea. Maybe you've done that. I have. I put something in a special box, and I put the special box somewhere, and I forget that I have it. But it's a nice surprise to open up maybe 5 or 10 years later. So these are what they call tea caddies. And the word caddy, even though we've come to think of it as a small container, most especially for tea, was probably a derivative. We say that's something that came from the word Caddy, which was, again, another measure for tea in particular, but other things too. And it was probably in the amount of 16 ounces or a pound. In China, tea is called cha, the tone rises. And because that's what the Chinese call it, other languages have taken that up. And in particular, in Russia, you refer to tea as chai, in India too, in Hindi. So that's what I have. I have 2 caddies for tea, and one is from China and one is from Russia. And what I like so much about this one is it looks a little bit like maybe you've seen some of the onion domes of Russia. So this reminds me of the architecture of some of the churches and important buildings in Russia. And also, of course, I think of tea and Russia in the same breath, or I should say in the same gulp. And this one I like very much as well because if you can see, it's carved and you have a nesting bird here, and then you have two birds standing who look to me like roosters or chickens, and it's because of that I purchased this box in an antique shop for my mother, who did not drink tea, but who fancied roosters. So, the tea caddies. Again, there are so many different kinds of containers and boxes, and there's so much to think about in connection with the kinds of containers that we make and the way that we use those containers or come to enjoy those boxes or containers. So I'll leave you to ponder that. And I wonder now if you'll go and you'll find a special box and make that your own himatsubako, your personal secret box. And you'll find something special to hide away, either just for you or something that you can rediscover later on. All right, good to see you. Take care. More soon.